So take us inside that room for a minute, if you could. Argentina has made a lot of progress economically. What did Mr. Macri want or need from President Trump?
Well, clearly, on the surface, the main thing he needs is some sort of support for lemon exports into the U.S. out of Argentina. That is being an issue that has occupied the press in Argentina for a few months. But what he needs this year is to solidify his popularity locally. As of now, I would argue that he's more popular outside Argentina than inside Argentina. Even though he's having around 50% of popularity, having midterm elections, it's a critical test for him and his party.
So he came to power on the wave, I think it's fair to say, of great dissatisfaction with his predecessor, in large part because, I think, of the economic situation. How much has that improved? Is President Trump right that he's created tremendous success down there?
Well, I think that Argentina was enduring a lot of distortions, and President Macri has started to solve some of those distortions, but the main issue that it remains out there is the size of the fiscal deficit and the size of the public sector, and that's something that clearly hasn't been tackled as aggressively because the potential cost in terms of employment and popularity. So Argentina is clearly on the right path. Argentina clearly is trying to has the right ideas. The implementation is taking a bit longer in some aspects, I think, because of politics.
Do they have the political wherewithal, the strength, the capital to make those sort of fiscal changes? Because as a practical matter, I suspect that means employment, government employment.
And that is a key issue. If you see the first year, Macri confronted very little opposition on the part of labor unions, and now labor unions have become much more proactive, fighting the government. So I think that he wants confirmation in the election that he has that mandate. And after that, obviously, he has time until another presidential election to be able to implement a more aggressive policy. So far, all the the heavy lifting has been done by the central bank, and that's part of the problem why the economy is not growing as much as expected. In fact, in numbers in February were kind of bad because rates are kept high in order to crush inflation, but the source of inflation continues to be the fiscal deficit.
So if what Mr. Macri really could get from President Trump that would be helpful is the ability to export more to the United States, what is it that he could give President Trump? How could President Trump benefit from this relationship?
Well, I think that there hasn't been a clear indication of what the policy towards South America, the Southern Cone, has been on the part of President Trump. And obviously, the reputation about NAFTA and Mexico has created the impression of not being as engaged as it was expected. I think the advantage of Macri is that clearly he's aligned with, I would say, market policies, open markets, and he's a very popular president at home. So it might be one of the best candidates for him to meet from the region because he's someone who actually looks like a winner. Unlike, for example, now, the president of Brazil, Temer, who, even though he's doing a good job, he's not as popular, and obviously the president of Mexico, that also is has very low internal popularity.
So to speak for a moment to a U.S. investor or an international investor, why would Argentina be a good investment or not be? I mean, all of emerging markets, have been rising in recent months. Is Argentina in that pack? Is it at the top of the pack? Is it falling behind?
I think Argentina has been from a pure capital market standpoint, one of the best performers for two reasons. One, I think overall emerging markets have done well. Another one, Argentine assets got an additional boost on the back of the tax amnesty that this government implemented that, in a way, induced Argentines to regularize $100 billion plus of dollars, and a lot of that had been poured into Argentine assets. The issue that remains a key issue for the government is actually long-term investments, and that is where the surge on overseas investments has not materialized. And that is one of the things that I think by coming here, and if you see, before coming to D.C., he was in Houston, because actually they are looking for investments in infrastructure and in energy, and those investments require a much more longer horizon, and obviously, given the history of Argentina, they're much more difficult to come by.
And finally, Diego, there was some talk, at least at the beginning of the Trump administration, that actually the things that were being said about NAFTA could benefit other Latin American countries in the sense that maybe this would open things up to a broader international trade agreement. Is that just a pipe dream?
I do not think that is a pipe dream, but I do think that part of the negative reaction toward NAFTA has been maybe not a bit exaggerated. We remain kind of constructive that the NAFTA overall agreement is going to remain in place, obviously with modifications. So in a way, on the back of that, can there be more regional trade? Absolutely, but I don't see it as a replacement of NAFTA, because on top of that, a big part of the Mexican economy is geared towards transactions with the US. I don't know how easy it's going to be to transfer that investment in productive capacity to satisfy markets south of Mexico.